haven't made this type of video for a long time. On Mother's Day, in the morning, I found a puppy. I've been looking for a puppy for my big dog, for a companion for a long time, for months and months. And so I found it, and I went and picked it up and paid for it on the morning of Mother's Day. And I thought, oh, how nice that I find a puppy on Mother's Day. Anyway, the next day was a Monday, and for a few days I was having a health problem. It was bleeding from the birth canal, and for days, and it was bright red and dark. Now, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 50 years. I've been a registered nurse for 32 years. So I usually try to fix myself up by myself. But the bleeding wasn't stopping, and it smelled very bad. So I was kind of forced to actually go to the emergency room. So I called my neighbors across the street and I told them what was happening, and they came right over to take care of the dogs because I didn't know how long I would be gone. So I couldn't drive there, of course, and the neighbors needed to stay here for the dogs. So I called 911 and they sent an ambulance, and it was about a 10-minute ride to the hospital. I wasn't really aware of which hospital is better. There's two hospitals here in Central Florida where I am. So I got to the emergency room. It was like midnight, so not many people there. And I told them my problem. And there was a doctor there on duty, tall woman with big hands, like she was like a basketball player, but she was a doctor. So she examined me and said that I had a uterus that had fallen down the birth canal and was hanging out. Now, first of all, if it was hanging out, it would be when I walk, it would have been like I was carrying a large orange. You can't walk like that. So already I knew that, she wasn't telling me the correct thing. And then she said she was going to push it back in with these big hands she had, which she did, and it hurt. And so when I got up from the table, I felt something slip out, and I told her, well, it seems like it slipped out again. Now, before I went to the hospital, I was trying with a mirror to see what was going on down there. And there was like, those branches that Tarzan hung on and swung in the films? That's what it looked like, a long branch, but it was black, totally black. And I touched it, but there was no feeling in it, so it couldn't be anything to do that belonged to me. It was like something else. So anyway, while I was at the hospital, I was very nervous, of course, and I asked a group of young people working there. I said, is there a rabbi here? And one of them said, I don't know. That was it. So I was getting the feeling that this is not a good hospital. Of the two hospitals where I am, that was not the good one. Anyway, so she didn't really do anything else, but gave me some paperwork. And I don't have a bill yet from the hospital. Heaven knows how much it is. And I only have type A Medicare, which takes care of hospital, or at least 80% of hospital. Anyway, so they sent me home like 2 a.m. and then I was given instructions by the basketball player doctor, she's a doctor, to go to a gynecologist, and they gave me a list. So I just picked one out, a female gynecologist. So about 3 days later, I went to that office. I had been told in the hospital to drink a lot of water because I'm losing blood. And if I keep losing so much blood, I am going to have a problem, low iron. But they kept stressing the water. So I was at this, the gynecologist's office, and I said, do you have some water here that I could have? And so a young woman came out and gave me a little cup of water, and I tasted it, and I'd never tasted anything so terrible in my life. It was like, it tasted like liquid gas, I imagine, So I went back in the back there, speaking to one of the people there, and I said, what's wrong with the water? It tasted like gas. And she just looked at the other nursing assistant there and said, and I said, what's wrong? What kind of water is it? And they told me it was just tap water. Anyway, that's just a little example of what kind of way that, in my mind, that young people are treating other people. I don't understand this generation. These are people in their 20s, and it was very different when I was in my 20s and working in hospitals, etc. Anyway, they bring me in there, and there's no gynecologist there, but there's an APRN, Advanced Practice Registered Nurse. Now, I'm a registered nurse. Okay, maybe the doctor, the gynecologist is sick or something and she's standing in. But I found out later, the gynecologist is almost never at the office. She just calls in, or they call her and ask her advice. And that whole thing, when I got finished with it, was $700. So while I was in the examination position, the RN was doing, the exam, and I said, can you take a picture of it? Because I really can't see well down there, even with a mirror. So she stands up and starts walking toward my purse to get my camera, and I said, no, what if you press the wrong button? Like a picture of that could be sent all over the place. My relatives, my in-laws, please. So she started laughing, and then I said, can you use your camera? And she didn't answer. So since then, I've looked it up online, and they have pictures online of what it was. So she's asking me questions. I'm answering as best as I can. When did this happen? When did this start? And I kept changing my mind because my memory's slow now. I might say last week, and it was just 2 days ago. So as I was trying to remember, I was remembering correctly. And this RN asked me, why do your answers keep changing? Why can't you remember? And I said, I'm an old lady. We have memory issues. What kind of a question is that? Obviously, I'm an old lady. Anyway, excuse me. So she described it, the same thing that I'd seen, you know, this long thing, like 5 inches hanging out of the birth canal, the entrance to the birth canal. And of course she wrote a report of it. And in the report, she described it as friable and infarcted. And she didn't know if it had anything to do with cancer. Now, friable means you touch it and it's soft and the pieces fall off. And infarcted means dead. Like, that's why it's black, it's dead. Like it used to be flesh color. So I finished in there and came home, and after a few days, I didn't see that thing hanging from me anymore. And I'm thinking, well, under normal circumstances, if it had dropped off in the toilet, I would have seen it, right? But since I get up at night to use the bathroom, and I don't turn on the lights, of course, at 2 a.m., it's just a tiny night light, so it must have fallen off, and you know, got flushed, and you know, it was dark in there, so I didn't actually see it again. And all this time I'd had a terrible smell, and the smell was gone. So the thing wasn't there anymore. The smell was gone, and the bleeding was stopping. So after that, I called them and said, do you have the report ready? I like to read it, because they did a pap smear and they did other tests on it. And they said, we have no way of giving you the report. And I had already given them my credit card, and you know, to pay them the $700 for this so-called great exam. So I called up my credit card company and I said, stop the payment. They won't give me the report. I mean, what am I paying for? So after a lot of calls back and forth, that they had some young woman from the office calling me and said, we can't send you the report, but I'm going to read it to you. Can you imagine? This current generation is just amazing, and it's not funny. It makes people suffer. So it was going back and forth, and finally, they sent me a report. So they were waiting for the biopsy, for the pap smear and all that stuff. And a few more days, they actually sent me a real normal report. So it said the pap smear was negative. And they said the object that was hanging, that didn't have anything abnormal in it either. So no cancer problem, no infection, nothing. So it seems to me my body just cured itself, because these what it is was a polyp. You start with one polyp and you get more polyps, and sometimes the polyp gets twisted or it gets too heavy and it breaks off, and then there's bleeding, and that's it. So the body just took care of itself. Now, I'm not the kind of person that takes medicines and goes to doctors and you know, and I'm vegan, and I'm so careful what I eat, and when I have a problem, I look up online and see what vitamin do I need and what food contains that vitamin. So, and I work like crazy in the yard, and I do a lot of fasting, and I don't eat anybody else's cooking. So I'm thinking my body just healed itself. But under the circumstances, when I was, thinking should I go to the emergency room or not, I had no experience with polyps. Nobody ever warned me when I was getting a pap smear years ago that, you keep getting your pap smears because if there's a polyp, there might be a problem with that. There might be too many polyps. So that's it. The polyps kept growing. Then they got twisted or something and died. And, it's like a plant. And then it dropped out. So then a few days later, there's no bleeding at all, no bad smell, there's no aching in that area, and I'm back to all my regular activities. So there goes $700 for all that, $800 for the ambulance, and I have not gotten the emergency room bill yet. So we'll see. It's interesting that the hospitals called me and said they're going to help me get Medicaid. So I did this thing online, and a few days later I hadn't heard from them. So I called the Medicaid number, and finally someone answered, and they said that they cannot give Medicaid to me because I have too many resources. And they said that there's a figure there that I have $132,000, which I don't, of course. So just recently I found out what the $132,000 are. It's the value that Zillow has put on my house, my old handy woman special house. It's worth $132,000. So it seems that if you have a home and don't live in the Walmart parking lot, if you actually have a house, that you can't get Medicaid. So what else is new? What does this teach me? I got a really, really good education. I know more, and I like to know things. And the Almighty provides. That's all. And there's all kinds of ways you could help yourself financially. Some banks give you, if you open up a new bank account, and you connect it to Social Security, so it gets these payments every month, or a new credit card that will give you $500 if you spend $1,000 in 3 months, and things like that. And don't go to restaurants. Cook your own food. I mean, why is it that I work harder than most of the men in my retirement community? And why is it that I don't take medications and that I have no disease? Zero. I have wrinkles. That's not a disease. So I don't know if this talk of mine is going to help anyone. Oh yes, do not go to HCA hospitals. Go to Advent hospitals. My elder son, he's a computer person, and years ago he worked at Mercy Hospital, a Catholic hospital in Miami, and there was a lot of nuns working there, and HCA came along and bought the hospital. And they told all the staff, doctors, nurses, and nuns, and priests, we will not do any drastic changes. Don't worry. Okay? So what happens? My son was walking through the hallway at Mercy where he was working, and he sees a nun in the corner crying. I mean, you usually don't see that. Anyway, he went over to her and he said, "Sister, can I help you? What's wrong? Are you okay?" And all she could say was, they're changing everything. You know what I got from going to HCA? You know what I got? This is what they gave me. These are a pair of socks. I don't know what to do with them. That's it. I got a pair of socks. No, I love knowledge, and I found out how good my neighbors were across the street, and I found out a lot of things about a few relatives. You know, who cares and who doesn't care, and that's important. So I hope you get something out of this. Anyway, the Almighty provides, and that's my story. Go vegan. Vegan, and get a dog.